As we start a couple announcements, next, I know summer may seem like you just got done with summer, but it's actually not a bad time to be looking for that next summer internship here. So I'll be sending out an announcement either later on today or tomorrow about the STEM Fest next week and the companies and jobs that are here there. For that. And then also the DigiKey will be on campus. When are they on campus? Tuesday. They're on campus Tuesday with free food right after this class. So I'm kind of hoping we will take this class and just walk down to DigiKey's place and just eat their pizza after this class. That's my plan. And you're welcome to join me for that. Um, so, and then that they're just doing a little short presentation on Tuesday, and then they're doing on-campus interviews on Wednesday. So Tuesday you can sign up for on-campus interviews. They're again hiring summer internships and I assume some entry-level jobs here. Oh, and also I'll be sending out entry-level jobs if you're graduating in like December. This is the time you should be doing that. I also have seen that some of you have not signed up to come to my house for the fall welcome today. Yes? What? Noel?
The redhead that was
Yes, as long as if she's been in a computer class, you know, if she has been here, bring her. Right, that's fine then. So yeah, sign up and come. We have a sign up sheet, so we have enough food. But I'm actually going out and getting the last of the food this afternoon, so we'll have plenty of food. So you know, you can just show up even if you didn't sign up there. But all the CIS faculty, all the nice ones, will be there. Uh, And so yeah, we'll be there. And again, we're just Brandon's bringing a cornhole game, which I because I don't own one, because I never thought that was a thing you owned. But we're doing that to play. Uh, you know, cornhole. You throw these not balls, bean bags. You throw bean bags. That's it.
It has like so many different things.
Okay.
Literally, my family just calls it
bean bags. Okay. Right. So yes. We'll set out, we'll just have sandwiches and veggies and fruit and cookies and stuff like that. So starting at 5, you know, out so you can grab whatever you want. You don't have to stay very long. Just grab some food, smooth a little bit, you know, and then networking. That's important. So, uh, okay. So I encourage you to do that. I'll send out, there's a sign up sheet again, especially if you need a ride. And later, right after this class, I'm going to be kind of assigned as a couple people who need rides, and we'll be trying to pair those people up for this. So, okay. So that's the announcements. Let's jump into today's work. So we're going to finish up chapter 1 today. We're going to actually walk through the learning activity and the assignment to make sure. I like to make sure we're all on track the first time. Some of you may not have done this in one of my classes, so we'll just work. Some of you have done this a lot, so that's fine too. So we'll just go through the learning activity and the activity, and the assignment today also. So I'm just going to jump here and talk a little bit more about Scrum and how Scrum works here. And then, oh yeah. So I think, and then also already just another quick announcement I forgot is that Tuesday already we have our first guest speaker, Steve. Guess where Steve works? DigiKey. So I believe he's here in person. I don't think we're going to Zoom him because I think he's here for the free pizza also after class. So I believe he'll be here. So we'll have me talking. I'll be here, well, from 10 until 11, and then we'll turn over to Steve. Steve will talk about what he's doing at DigiKey as a developer, because the recruiters don't know the develop, what, Steve can tell us though, how development actually works there for that. So we'll talk to him on Tuesday, and then we'll go have that. So online people, you can sign up for interviews. We'll share some more information on Tuesday on that. And we will Zoom Steve visit here, so will be able to see that. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, let's go back to Scrum. Hey, so we were talking about the basics of Scrum and how this is an agile framework, and it works in these cycles, which we call sprints. And every often 2 weeks, you go through a sprint, and you'll select items that you want to do here. And these items are often called user stories for this. And we talked about how this is different than the traditional waterfall approach, which is this long sequential approach, where this is very much an agile cyclic approach. We do it again and again. Every 2 weeks, we do a sprint, and we do more features. We don't have to do all the features at once. We can just add some at a time here. We talked about a Scrum board here, and we'll look at an electronic version of that when we get down to that part of this. So we talked about the different cards on this, particularly a user story, and that user stories can be broken down sometime into tasks, things you have to do, defects, things you have to fix, and technical debt here. And we talked, and your assignment is going to be looking more at technical debt. And again, that's the stuff, design decisions you often make as a shortcut, which you have to come back and fix later on. Well, you don't have to fix, but it would be good to fix later. So talk a little bit about debt. Who's worked with, not debt, defects? Who's worked, a lot of companies have some sort of a tracking system where you could submit corrections, fixes, and stuff like that, and you have to track them. Who's working with? So we just updated the one here on campus. Anyone working with the help desk here? So yeah, so how do you I assume you create, the normal thing is you create tickets and assign them. So as a help desk person, do you create the tickets? I send in an email sometimes.
Yeah.
You create tickets?
So
are they called tickets, or what are they called?
Yeah, they call them tickets.
Okay.
So I think when you send an email, the system automatically makes a ticket.
Okay. Who assigns that ticket to someone then?
We assign it.
Okay, so the people at the workers at the help desk generally assign it to. So how do you know who to assign it to?
It just depends on what you want, because we already know these types of tickets are usually fixed by this department. So maybe
I would think you just assign everything to Michael Jackson and then just see how much you can get him to do. No, you don't do that? Okay, I would not. If it were my choice, that's what I would do. But I can see you might want to do something a little different there. Okay, and then as you fix them, they're cleared or something like that. What happens next to the tickets?
So after we assign them to a specific department that is in charge of that, after they fix whatever the problem is, they can clear that ticket.
Right.
If it's something that we can fix, then we just fix it
and clear the ticket. Yes. So a lot of IT workers will come in here, and a portion of their day will just be looking at what they've been assigned. What's your tickets here, and clearing on, seeing if you can clear off some of those tickets there. So that's a large portion. And probably what you do as a help desk too is you might have tickets that are out there. So that that sometimes when we see this defect stuff, now those are tickets and that's usually a different thing than stories, but it's often kind of related in that sometimes defects that are larger will have to be, can't just be tweaked or whatever, they have to be, we have to make changes to the software system to do that here, and that'll be brought into a story or a sprint upgrade. So, so we talked a little bit about user stories, and we said, as and you have some role, I want to do something, some verb behavior, so that, and then describe why do you want to be able to do this. And we'll take, in a little bit, we'll have you try to break into groups and write some of these user stories. And again, these are often written in little cards, and again, they're pretty short, so they kind of replace requirements in some ways. Some companies will start with a short user story and have more details on it, like on the back of the card or in an online system somewhere else for that. But often we try to capture, the essence of it in the story itself in just a few short words. Okay, let's talk a little bit about swim lanes here. So in a swimming pool, you swim back and forth on these lanes. Have you ever been in a swimming pool with some lanes? I have not really very much, but that's right. That's how they work. I watched the Olympics. Did you watch the Olympics? Summer Olympics? So swim lanes are these columns here and in our board, and then we move things up. We generally start items on the left side and move them to the right because we're English, I guess, here. Our writing works that way. So the first swim lane is usually on the left side and then going towards the right. So often there's some development or work in progress or working on or assigned to swim lanes, and then some like testing or completing, and then usually a done swim lane at the end here. So as we assign these tasks, they move across. So that really doesn't make sense to me, because when you're swimming, you don't swim across the lines. You swim vertically up and, you go back and forth here. But our little tasks will go across the board. So, but those are the swim lanes. There are not standards for swim lanes. Let's see, the textbook talks about some of them. The backlog is everything that needs to be done. In progress is what we're working on. QI is, again, going to testing or something like that. And then done are common versions of this. And again, in the assignment, I think we'll have you try to compare some swim lanes in another picture with what we have here as their sample. Again, technical debt is mentioned here. We talked about that. And then for the assignment, you're going to look at this layout here of, the 4 quadrants of technical debt for this. Let's talk a little bit about digital scrum boards here. This book is kind of old, so they're talking about how, some of the disadvantages of scrum boards and why people are resistant to them. Everyone uses them now, I think. So, like they say here, it's a cliche that people fear change. Fear is a natural reaction, unknown, and we just have to get over it and move on it. So let's try. So I'm going to just show you a digital scrum board called Trello. Trello. So you're welcome to try it out too. It's a well-known digital board here. So Trello, for this. I have a login, and you can just use your CSS login, your Google login here. So I'm just going to go continue as Tom at css.edu with Google verifying that. So again, you don't have to. I'll just show you how this works. But again, if you want to just play with this and see this, we can do that. So in the free account, I can create a couple boards and do a couple systems and stuff like that for this. So I can create a board, or I can start with a template. So I'm going to start with a template here. So I'm going to actually do this Kanban template. I have a limit on my collaborators, it looks like. I thought I deleted some of my collaborators here. So let me see. Okay. Interesting. Okay, well, let me just go to this board. So again, you can set up a board and you can set up these swim lanes, and then you can move items from one place to the other. For some reason, it's not letting me edit it because it thinks I have too many collaborators. So I don't know why that is, because I've deleted collaborators, but it just might take a bit. So you can then move things around here. You can actually set up your different swim lanes here and add items. You can assign items to boards. Here, let's look at this board. So here we have a hold area, to do, a doing, done, and archive areas. So again, you can set up your swim lanes here, and then you can type in, you can create these little to-do things. You can color code them. You can assign them to individuals here. So here we have assignments to them. And again, it's just a matter of moving them back and forth and setting them up for this. So that's kind of Trello. And how Trello works. And again, it's one of a number of these online boards for this stuff. So that's a digital Scrum board. And I think, like I said, it'll be interesting to see when we talk to guest speakers, if we find anyone who's not using a digital Scrum board. If actually has anyone used an actual physical Scrum board with, a whiteboard like Scrum board? So yeah, I think the pandemic kind of did away with those, and I don't think they're coming back. So okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about metrics, and then we'll let you start. We'll work on the learning activity. So we do want to do some measurements of things. So one thing we often do is assign story points to things. So, you've played these games where you win coins or something like that, and you don't know what value coins have, but within that game, a coin has a certain value. Same with courses. You're in this course, and I'll assign you 10 points. Is that good or bad? If you go to Chris's course and Chris gives you 100 points for an assignment, does that much better than my 10 points? So it's all kind of relative here. And story points are kind of the same way. A company will start assigning story points and they'll have some relative meaning in that company, but there's not an arbitrary conversion necessarily of story points to hours or tasks or stuff like that. Some companies will talk about that. We'll try to have some sort of conversion, but we'll generally assign points to things. And so the idea is that if you have some stories that you have to do, and you go, oh, this one's going to take twice as long as this one, you'll give one 2 points, the other one 4 points, saying that 4, it's a bigger story. It's a chunk of time here. So that's the idea of story points. And again, we realize one of the things that software developers hate is that people ask us to estimate, how long is this going to take? I just went through this a couple weeks ago. How long is this going to take? We are billing a client and guessing how many hours. I go, I don't know. I've not done this particular thing. And so I guess how many hours. And then we send out the bill to the client and the client says, okay, that's good. We'll pay you that. The problem is if it takes twice as long to do, I'm working twice as much for the same amount of payment here. Same here, if you say, so you're trying, it's really hard to estimate these things because it's really easy to estimate something you've done 50 times here. I can give you a really good estimate how long it takes me to make breakfast and have breakfast in the morning. Because every day I make breakfast. And again, there's a couple different breakfasts I make, but I've done each one multiple times. I can tell you how long, a good estimate of making breakfast there. But if I were to want to estimate something that I've never done before, it's hard for me to estimate that. And a lot of software stuff is things that you may not have done that exact thing before. So it's really hard to estimate here. And so again, story points is kind of arbitrary for that. So like here, they're trying to show that one story point is about maybe 5 to 10 hours here. 2 story points is maybe about 20 hours of time, on average when we talk to lots of people. 3 story points is maybe 30. So again, in their mind, every story point is about 10 hours here. I always kind of think of a story point is like a day or 2 of work for that. So, something that takes 5 story points is going to take, almost an entire sprint for one person here possibly. So, or a half of a sprint, depending on how much it is. Also to keep it good, so do you recognize the numbers? So 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. Yeah, so that's your Fibonacci sequence. Story points are just often broken down that way. I would almost rather have them, again, we don't want to say, oh, I think that, and have big arguments where is that 11 story points or 12 story points? Well, we don't really care. We're not that accurate in our measurement anyway. So we're just going to assign, well, it's either going to be 8 or 13. Is it an 8 or is it 13 there? So these Fibonacci numbers, so the next number is, you take the 2 previous numbers, add them together to get the next number. So 2 plus 3 is 5, 3 plus 5 is 8, 5 plus 8 is 13 here. Now, I've also seen them just double, 2, 4, 8, 16 is another way, you just double it each time as the story points. So for this. We're not going to talk about velocity. That's how many story points we're doing. We will talk a little bit about the sprint burn down, and we'll see that later on in class, like maybe on the exam or something like that. So what is a sprint burn down? At the beginning of the sprint, we pick what tasks we want to do. So again, if we look at our chart here, we will pick from our backlog which items we want to do during this sprint. And then we'll list them here, and then we'll have how many story points are on each one. And again, it'll hopefully then if we've done a couple sprints, we got some ideas, so we know about how many story points our team can do here at a time. So we've got those, and then now as the week goes on, we're going to try to complete those tasks, get those moving through this and all the way to the right-hand side there. And so your Scrum Master or your project manager wants to measure how well you're doing and see if you're on task. So we'll say we're going to start with 25 story points maybe in our list to do this week. And as we go through, we want to see how many we get done in a 2-week period for this. So our sprints often start on Tuesday or Wednesday and go through here. Again, the idea is that at the end, you might have a big push. We often don't want that push to be Friday because we don't want to work a lot on Fridays there. I remember my goal when I was a software developer is that by noon on Friday, I was out on the sand volleyball court playing sand volleyball, and I was just not going back in afternoon there. So a lot of fellow developers who would want to, by noon, they'd want to be driving out to the ski slopes. I wasn't a big skier and do that. So again, since Friday might not be a full day in some of these worlds, Monday, maybe our sprint will end here, or Tuesday. So that you often see that on these sprints for this. And again, we want to be every day working things down. And then this is kind of the timeline, but then we'll have the actual line going down. My experience is that the line will not look like this, in that a lot of times the line, you don't get anything done you're just investigating stuff. So the line is actually usually pretty flat, horizontal the first couple days, unless you have lots of little story points. So it's flat, and then all of a sudden by Thursday, people are actually getting things done, and Friday, and then that line will drop down, and then it might be flat for a couple days and go down as people get some of the larger story points done and things like that. But again, that's what we like to see. We like to see us completing these tasks, moving things around, across our board during that sprint. Now, this is just 2 weeks or one sprint is our time frame here, left to right. This is the feature burn up, and I haven't seen this used, but because I haven't been out in the field, I don't know if people use this, but this is kind of each dot is a 2-week sprint generally. And what we're trying to show is that how many features or how is our progress on our whole product changing as we go through these sprints here. So here, each dot is a sprint, where here, each one of these is a day, basically. So different time frame on that. Okay, so let's try to do some user stories for this. So again, the learning activity, we're going to break you into groups or pairs. So we'll see if we can just pair you up today. And then but if you're online, or if you don't feel like pairing up, you don't have to pair up today. And then we're just going to have you pick some software you want to use and figure out some user stories. So let's just pair up, pair, you two pair up. Here,
you don't even question.
Yeah.
Just go over it. You know how it goes.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, you're okay. So the idea is then to pick some, and Michael, you're on your own, it looks like. So okay, and then so pick some software that you both have used. So it can be anything from a game to Gmail So some, or an app that you both use, something like that. And then try to think, what are some changes? If you were a developer for that app, what changes, what would you make for that? What store, what features would you want to add to it there? And so you can certainly think of it as a user, because you are a user in of that. But again, look at your roles. And so maybe, like, let's say you work at the help desk and you use the help desk system. So with the help desk system, there's just like, I don't know, client, someone who submits a ticket there, but also help desk. So a role might be that as a help desk student employee or help desk employee, I want to be able to do what to that ticketing system for that. So try to think of some software you've used where and in what role you would do, and write a user story. Then we want a couple user, what did I say here? So we want 2 user stories for this stuff. Pause the recording for a sec while we work on this. Hopefully I'm going to turn the recording back on. Okay, hopefully you're working on these user stories. So just a quick thing. We want you to post them to the discussion area. It would make my life easier if everyone posted. So if you're working with a partner, just post a copy of it. Because when I grade these, I just see what you have posted there. So if you can just share it with your partner and both of you post it there under assignment or unit 1 assignment discussions here. And then you can also see, so we've got our online students, Lonnie, Bethany, and Nora, and Bethany and Nora's posted about Discord here. Surprise, surprise. And so she's posted her user stories here. And again, following the standard template, as a Discord user, I want to be able to customize my notification settings more gradually or granularly, so I can reduce distractions and receive. So again, standard format, the role, what you want to be able to do here, and then why sort of idea. Now with this, so you want to post your 2 user stories. You also want to reply to someone else's with another user story for that software. So it works out well if you post or apply for software you've used. Otherwise, it's hard for you to write a user story. So like Michael's posted a reply here and had another user story for that. So you want to pick that software and write another user story for that. So you want to end up with 2 posts, 1 post with your original user stories that you came up with here, and then 1 is a reply to add another user story to someone else's post. Got it? And so you do not have to actually turn anything in. Oh, the learning activity. Oh, I see. Yes. So we're not this week. You do have to turn in for the assignment too, because I'm using the learning activity assignment together. In the future, you'll do discussion separate from the learning activity, but because we're not doing that much this first week here, you do it both. So also for the learning activity, just submit a link, to your user story, or paste them in there, or whatever you want to do for that also. Okay, while you're kind of working on that, well, yeah, I'll let you, I'll give you just a couple more minutes to work on that, and then we'll jump back to the textbook. All right, let's jump back to the textbook for a little bit and wrap that up. So back to the Scrum stuff, we were talking a little bit about like we mentioned the backlog. So we have some list of stories, features that we want to be adding to our product. And these can be generated from tickets or items like that, or from users, or from just a product owner wanting new features. So often we have a constant list, and it often developers are generating saying, oh, I'm going to do it this way, but we should add this, we should add this later on. So you often try to have a list of stories or features you want to be adding to this product later on. They talk about, let me kick up the font here. Here again, we mentioned the sprint should last, about 2 weeks, 1 to 4 weeks, depending on how the company has set it up. They talk about estimating and some project planning stuff. So again, sometimes you'll just work on how long like a feature or a story was going to take. Is this, small, medium, or large for this? And what priority, are some features you want to do them really quick, soon, or are, just desired, but we don't need to work on them right away here. They do talk about this, what they're calling is poker planning or planning poker, where again, you get your developers together, you read a story, and you kind of come to some agreement how long that story could take. Sometimes everyone will hold up a card saying how long it should take. Again, because we don't have a great way of estimating these. So this talks about a way of doing cards. This shows Fibonacci scale kind of here for this as a way of estimating things for this. And then let's talk about the daily stand-up meetings. So very common in Scrum, every day at the start of the day. The idea is just to help with communication, and sometimes technical people aren't the best at communicating. So it's kind of a way to force communication there. I know a lot of people don't love the daily Scrum or, the daily stand-up, but the idea is just to communicate, have a chance where, particularly if you're working on something and you're stuck and you need someone else's help, to be able to say, okay, I'm going to be working on this, and I need this, I need you, or I need to know how to do this, or I'm stuck on that. So what is your roadblocks? What are you doing today, and what are your roadblocks there? And again, if it's just a small group of 5 or 6, it kind of goes very quickly. Everyone just say, okay, I'm going to work on this today. I'm going to need this, or I'm going to work on that. There's 5 or 6, and you go fast. If you have 20 in your daily meetings, they can get a little tiresome here. So I'm not going to really deal with these sorts of calendars as are you smiley or not. Some people use those here. Now, at the end of this, the idea with a sprint is at the end of a sprint, you put everything together and you deliver something. What does that mean, to put everything in together? Often that comes down to source control. So we've used source control. We're certainly going to use it in this class, and we'll talk about that. But we don't use it as much as other companies. So it'll be interesting to talk to some of our speakers about how they use source control, like Git and GitHub there. But the standard practice is at the start of the sprint, so you have all your software in source control in what we call the main branch. And at the start of the sprint, everyone will pull a copy of the branch or branch of this off. So you'll fork a branch off, and then you'll work on your copy of the code on this feature here on this story. And then at some point you'll merge your branch back in for this, and any conflicts have to be reconciled, where you may have changed something and someone else has changed something, need to be reconciled for that. But so the idea is that at the end of the 2 weeks, everyone is checked back in and you're back in one branch. So kind of the idea is that at the start, you have, at the beginning of the sprint, you have one version of the code. everyone kind of makes their own copy, their own fork of the code. We edit it and we start checking in them and we merge them back in so that at the end of the 2 weeks, we just have one copy of the code, one main branch again. So, and then the demo is kind of like, okay, now we can demonstrate this to maybe a product owner or someone like that. We can show this to. And then you reflect on this. And again, if you're in project management, Brandon is very good. He's a project manager, trained project manager, so he works well with these reflections there. Where again, after our 2 weeks, what went well, what didn't, and how do we, how do we want to make any changes to our process and what we're doing to make this go better? So we'll have some reflection at the end of the sprint. I always think with reflections or retrospects, you always have food, but maybe that's just the Minnesotan in me. So I always think retrospect and food or drink, and you talk about how things went and see if you want to change anything for your next sprint. Okay, I'm not going to worry about triangulation or the Scrum calendar too much. In the real world, there are some issues. I mean, agile methodology help, but code is hard to manage and use there. It's hard to make code that you can adapt. Sometimes code is too rigid. Sometimes it lacks abstractions that we need, and we'll talk somewhat about this. And sometimes it has too many abstractions so that making little changes, it's just too complicated. It's hard to make these little changes. So often we want to find a sweet spot between how much abstractions or these layers. And again, we'll look at lots of ways of putting in things here. So again, this is kind of summary of things we'll be looking at throughout this course here. Responsibilities, some code, we want code just to be, often this method or this class should just be working on one thing. And if we want to fix that one or work in this one area, it should be just one class we have to work on or one set of code, certain methods. And so we'll talk about, single responsibility in code. We'll talk about testing code. We'll talk about skyhooks and cranes later on. So this is stuff that'll come into our code later on. We'll talk about unit testing and the complexity. I used to tell people back in the old days, we used to print out code, and I used to tell things that generally, a method should fit on a page, maybe 2 pages, but it shouldn't be too bad. And it shouldn't have, my general rule is you shouldn't have nested loops or nested if-then statements inside a method here. So if you have a loop and inside that loop, you're looping over all the customers, and inside that loop, you're looping over all the products or all the orders that customer had. And inside that, you're looping over all the items on that order. So you have a loop inside a loop inside a loop. You've done something wrong, because you should just have one loop that loops maybe through the customers, and then it should call another method that handles an order. And that should call another method that handles items or something like that, that you should break these up into parts. And so again, this is what this kind of talking about, is some measure of complexity of your code as far as how many if statements, loops, and switch statements are here, and how many, you don't want too much complexity in your code. I'm not a big fan of this sort of stuff. Again, I often just look at it from a screen. I often say, if your code is taking up rather than a page, two or screens, then it's a method is probably getting too long. And so we'll talk about some ways of doing that. Okay, I'm just gonna remind you about the assignment, and then we're gonna check in with running Visual Studio and get a quick start on that for next week. Make sure, because again, we want to make sure we can run the Visual Studio network next week. So I'll make sure we're there for this. So again, the assignment this week are these 3 questions, one on technical debt here, one about a Scrum board and finding an alternative Scrum board, and one question about user stories. So you can work on those and just submit those. And then again, everything's due on Sunday nights in this class. Okay, before we wrap up here, let's just make sure we can do Visual Studio for this. So again, we should be doing Visual Studio 2022. I'm going to run that. Now, it looks like there isn't a Visual Studio 2022 for the Mac. So if you're on a Mac, we're going to have you I'm going to try out VS Code. So Microsoft has two competing products now, Visual Studio, which is a bigger, more complex coding environment, and VS Code here. I've seen a lot of people now moving towards VS Code, but we're still using Visual Studio because a lot of, I think in a corporate environment, you're still seeing Visual Studio being used there. So but I hope by next week when we start editing code, and certainly next week you'll be able to do the assignment with VS Code also on a Mac. Okay, so you run Visual Studio. In the future, we'll be cloning a repository because I will give you a GitHub repository and you will copy it down from there. So in the future, we'll be doing, so starting next week, we'll be cloning a repository often for assignments and working on that. But for now, let's just create a new project here. So there are different kinds of projects, and one thing you should, and again, you should have a list of different projects that are available here, and we want to do a console app for this. Now, if you're, and we want to do it in C# because we have multiple languages here. So I want to do a C# console app. Now, if you're not seeing these, remember there's the Visual Studio installer here. And I can I have Visual Studio 2020. Now in the labs we have Enterprise Edition, but like on my own computer, I have the Community Edition, which is the free edition. And on your computer, if you have one, you probably have the Community Edition, but both of them you can modify. And we can see which of these libraries are available for this. And again, we want to be able to create a console application. So that's this .NET desktop platform. So I've got that checked. So that's why I know, so that's why it's available here. So I'm going to do a console app. So click what kind of app we want, hit next, give it some name, console app 1 seems fine. Now watch where it's being stored. By default, it's users tgiven source repos. I don't love that because I'm used to going into docs and I'm used to looking in my documents and seeing it there, like a Visual Studio 2020 thing here. And it is not storing it here, it is storing it in source. So that always means that I go to documents, I can't find it. I have to go to C, users, tgivens, and then there's a sources folder here, parallel at the same level as documents. So I generally change this over to tgivens, documents, and then I might make a source folder here, or I might just use, I have a Visual Studio 2022 folder. I'm just going to store it there. So either pay attention to where it's stored and leave it there, or you can change it to be in your documents. Okay, give it a name, manage location, hit next. We'll just leave this framework, the .NET. We'll talk more about .NET stuff later on, and there's a version of .NET that's kind of Windows specific, and then there's versions that can run on multiple platforms for this. So here's our console app. Again, / comment here. So that's just like Java. Now, what always drives me crazy is that I'm teaching Java on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and this here. And so on Java, it's system.out.print or print line. in here, it's console.write or write line here. So that's a difference here. So here's our hello world console.write line here, and I can run this. It runs it down below. So again, if you're used to NetBeans or something like, oh no, it's actually running it in a console. That's what it's doing. So here, what is it telling me? It should have, oh yeah, right. So it put hello world up at the top. I was looking where it should have said hello world. And then it just said it's waiting for me to hit any key to stop. So it runs it in a console window for us here. And I can just hit any key to go on with that. So again, you might want to start watching some things with this. It will work. Again, you probably have, you may not have used Visual Studio if you used, if you had the game design class. We may have done our code editing in Visual Studio there, although it's a little nicer here because on there, we had some trouble getting when you were editing it, but you weren't running it in Visual Studio. You're running it back in Unity for that. Where here we can run it and then we can do like breakpoints and do better debugging here than we sometimes than was easy to do in Unity there. But again, you probably use NetBeans, you probably use maybe Android Studio if you had mobile apps class, you maybe have seen a couple different IDEs, maybe not, maybe this just one of the first ones you've seen, but they have a lot of common features. This one, the Solution Explorer is on the right side here. So here's our program, and we have, so often I think like NetBeans and Android have it on the left side. So just know you have that. And you'll see different tabs over here for this. We will then start building up more complicated systems soon. And so we'll work next week. We'll do it. And then we'll learn how to do some integration with GitHub and setting up GitHub next week. But I just wanted you to be able to, create a project here and have C# installed in Visual Studio and be able to run an app here for this. So I'm going to quit here. And again, if you have some trouble getting this installed or with the assignment, call me over. Otherwise, I think we're good for week 1. Sound good?